Yeah, well, we'll keep it there.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Cool. Without further ado, I'll get us going.
All right, let's go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I have here with me live in my own apartment, Andy.
Hello.
I'm so glad to have him here. This is the first time I've actually been able to have someone over to the Man Talk podcast area where we actually record, so this is a lot of fun. Today is going to be another mentorship podcast, and we're going to be talking about Andy's experiences, and I might talk about mine for a little bit as well. But we'll be talking a fair amount of history on Andy today, and I'm really excited about him and what he's going to be talking about in the AIChE mentorship program. So, Andy, explain your background for those who don't know about you and how you got into UC Davis.
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to be here, so thank you for having me.
Anytime, yeah.
But to answer your question, so basically how I arrived at Davis, that was the question.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it was pretty typical, like any other student at Davis. I just applied to the UCs for myself. I applied to, I think, Berkeley, LA, SD, and Davis. And very fortunately, I got accepted into all four. But because I didn't want to stay close to home, so I'm from San Jose, so the Bay Area. LA and SD, they were contenders, but in the end, I did narrow it down to either Davis or Berkeley. I visited both campuses. I visited Berkeley during Cal Day. I visited Davis on a normal, typical day, and also picnic day. And after going to both campuses, I really fell in love with Davis. And so, against my parents' wishes, against the wishes of some of my teachers in high school, I decided to go with my gut feeling, and I decided to go to UC Davis. And I've been here ever since. This is my 10th year at UC Davis, actually. 10th. So this upcoming September marks exactly 10 years that I've been at Davis, a whole decade of my life at
lot.
Davis.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot. Because for me, I was there 4 years. Man, it's crazy. So that means this would be my starting of my 6th year in industry.
Mm-hmm.
Dang, that's a long time. And we were in the same class.
Mm-hmm.
Same class. So, what made you come on down to AIChE once you got into UC Davis?
Well, to be quite honest, originally I wasn't really drawn into AIChE or AIChE. One of my mentees actually insists on calling it AIChE, and so I go in between those two.
I'll reference Rose on this one. I think you actually have to call it AIChE, but I'll get her opinion because she's got it down. She's got it down. She still goes to conferences from time to time. So
Well, okay. Well, as I mentioned originally, I wasn't really drawn into the organization. At first, I was like, well, I'm already spending all this time in classes and coursework regarding chemical engineering or classes that will, I guess, introduce me to the world of chemical engineering. Why would I actually go, like, spend my free time going to these events and these meetings where I'm yet again, like, engulfed in this world of chemical engineering? So my first year, even though I heard about the organization from our freshman reps in, I think at our time it was called ECM5. Yes, ECM5, I believe.
yeah, 2011 winter quarter
Yeah, exactly.
when everything started to change.
Exactly. So I knew about the organization, but I didn't really feel like attending any meetings or really meeting any people. I do regret that now a little bit, but that was how I felt during that time. It wasn't until I believe fall quarter of my sophomore year, one of my housemates was also a chemical engineer, and he told me that I should join him at the first general meeting. There would be free food. We would get a T-shirt if we paid our dues. Why not? So I decided to, okay, I'll join you. I went. I got my free T-shirt. I got my free burrito. I got a feel for what the organization was about. They were talking about how they were gonna get guest speakers and whatnot, resume workshops, that sort of stuff, and I did find use in it. But again, I didn't really feel like diving in and like making my entire world be chemical engineering. So after that first general meeting, I sort of stayed away. No hard feelings, nothing like super negative. I just didn't want to really get involved all too much. Plus, at that point, classes were getting a little bit more difficult, and I didn't want to spend like those couple nights, instead of studying or working on my assignments. I didn't really want to go to those general meetings or events. Even though I really should have, though. I really, really, really should have. It wasn't really until my third year when I really got more involved with AIChE, mainly because of the mentorship program. Because of the mentorship program, it gave me more of a reason to go. And then we'll talk about this more later. But the mentorship program really appealed to me because I didn't feel very comfortable my first 2 years of my undergrad. I wanted to maybe find similar people in that sort of situation similar people in that sort of situation, and I wanted to maybe help them out a bit. So that was when I got more involved in AIChE, mainly due to that mentorship program. Yeah.
You know what? I had a similar feeling with my first 2 years at Davis with AIChE. There was this sense that, yeah, I'm glad they're doing what they're doing, but it's not for me. Their objective seems a little different than mine at this time, and I really didn't have a use for it, which is kind of dumb because the mentorship program really is the essence of the use as a lower division student. But it was also different back then. Back then, it was more of the, hey, you're going to get paired up with an upperclassman member, and they're going to meet up with you maybe once a quarter, and that's kind of cool, but that wasn't exactly what I had in mind for help. I mean, well, what's once a quarter, right? Well, you catch lunch with the DC, you swipe them in or something, and then call it a day. That's kind of weird. But they changed it a lot in our upperclassmen days that were really important. And I think if I were a lowerclassman again, I think I would have done that. But the way it was done at first seemed to be not as appealing and not as useful. So... And there was just something about it where I'm not comfortable with this. I don't feel like I belong here. I'll probably just hang out with my ChemE friends instead of everybody. And that's a lot less people to keep track of. And I can just hear about what's going on in my classes and not what everyone's talking about for ECH 140 or those other classes that are high social topics within AIChE that fall quarter. So I get the same impression. Or at least I did when I was a sophomore and a freshman. So when you got into AIChE through the mentorship program, what ideas did you get to implement to start in the mentorship path?
So maybe clarify for me a little bit about what you mean by ideas that I wanted to implement.
Yeah, so a lot of it was, at least from talking to you from before, a lot of it was trying to take care of what you could have used in lower division. So some of the things that would have been useful to you that you didn't get, and maybe some of those tips or educational points or life experience that would have really gotten you a head start or even a better start than you started at sophomore or freshman level.
Oh, okay. So one thing I did emphasize to mentees that I had during my time is I personally, for myself, regretted not being as social as I could have been my first 2 years of undergrad. As I mentioned before, like a few minutes ago, I really just went to class and then went home. That was it. I barely had any friends inside the major. I barely even had friends outside the major either. I really was a little bit of a recluse those first 2 years. And so one thing I did emphasize to a number of my mentees was to just go out and meet people, whether it be just people in the major, in order to start getting a study group together, maybe have it be somewhat useful from a networking perspective in the far off future, etc., or even just meeting people in general, just like being social and not being alone and lonely in your bedroom like day after day. And so that's the main thing I really emphasized a lot.
I'm glad you did, because it's really easy to fall into that if you can't get into that initial socialization period, which that fall quarter that you get as a freshman. There's a big thing for transfer students that they get, but they miss out on what we had the opportunity for in the dorms or just in fall quarter in general. That first quarter should be find people you're going to spend time with, even if some of them aren't going to work out, because that's going to be your ultimate finding point, where everybody is trying to find people to hang out with, get study groups together, all that stuff. That's the quarter to do it, because you've got all these people that want to get involved with new friends, and they had to leave their high school experiences behind, and everyone's on a clean slate, so to speak. So now this is the time to get involved. And if you miss that, it's kind of sucks, because it could be spring quarter the next year, and they've already gotten so many experiences at Davis, and it may have already left you in the dust, which is bad, because that may reinforce the behavior of, well, I'm going to study by myself, and I'm going to maintain this sense of isolation instead of getting out there, because I'd say the other answers that you can't find out on your own are going to be in other people, because they'll give you another perspective, or they'll help you push harder, that kind of thing. So
I completely agree. I actually regret quite a bit my freshman year. So my freshman year, I lived in Quarto, so the suite style dorms, and so that was the first thing. Being suite style dorms, you don't really get to know many people outside of your suite, I think. When you're in Tercero or Segundo, you have the whole like open floor, like you get to know your floor mates a lot more, etc.
Oh yeah.
But like with Quarto, the suite style dorms, you don't really leave the door to your suite open. You really just get really close with the people inside your suite. So especially if it's like a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom suite, you basically get really close with those like 6 or 8 people or so. And you don't really get to know anyone else on your floor, and especially in your building. And so because of that as well, my freshman year experience was also a bit more limited in terms of my social interactions, since I really didn't get to meet that many people, I guess, naturally, just living in the dorms, because I was a bit reclusive inside my own little bedroom, inside my own little suite. And so just multiple layers that were never broken down.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually got to do the Quarto thing in summer 2010 before fall quarter. So, and I totally get the same impression, especially in summer session, because you're only going to get maybe half that suite full. So you may have 4 people. In my case, I think it was only 3 people in a spot meant for 8. So everyone's got their own room, and they're all in summer session. I mean, you're talking about people who have been there a long time that are getting something knocked out, transfer students from other universities, and then me at that time, a freshman that had not even started fall quarter yet. So there was that isolation thing can be a real problem if you don't have another outlet to get out of it. And living in Tercero the next quarter, radically different experience. In fact, I would argue not even only the whole floor, but just the whole building lightly, because you got to have those dorm meetings at first, which is all 3 floors, at least of that particular building. And that was quite a bit. So you at least knew of them, and then your floor, you would know more of them, and then whoever's in your corner because ours was the end of the hallway. You really get to know those adjacent buildings. So those were important days, because I mean, let's see here, 1, 2, 3. I can think of at least 3 of them that I continue to be in interaction with in that corner throughout all of my university period at some point or another. And then that same first floor, Julian, the co-host of this thing, he was at the end of the corridor, and I'm still talking to him 9 years later. So totally different experience than the Quarto thing. So yeah, if you're in that kind of spot, understand that may isolate you, and find a way out, or at least have an outlet. And then it's not a big deal, because then you actually return to a less chaotic dorm experience, which is the plus side of the suites.
Yeah. Like, as for myself, so I stayed in a 3-bedroom suite in a building that actually no longer exists. It was torn down the year after I was there, or 2 years after I was there. And I really only kept in contact with just one other person in my suite. So my suite was 2 doubles and 1 single, so 5 guys all together. I really only kept in contact with one of my 4 suite mates, and I literally didn't meet anyone else on my floor or in my building. That was it. That was my freshman year dorm experience. And so that just kind of emphasizes how secluded and how, I guess, isolated I was as a freshman, which is why when I talk to mentees nowadays, that's something that I really emphasize, because it's one of my biggest regrets as a freshman.
You know, so yours got turned, what was the name?
So I stayed in Castilian. Castilian is now, they tore it down, and now it's I think, like a high-rise apartment complex for graduate students called 5th and Wake.
Okay, so for ours it was K building, the old engineering dorm, and they tore that down right after we left, so 2011. So I was surprised, because we're the last ones in here. Okay, cool. The place really, I'm glad they built up whatever the new buildings they have there since our upperclassmen years. They look a lot better. So when you're paying, out the wazoo for housing, at least you're getting something like that versus what we got. So, but you can't put a price on the social aspect. I think that was the higher value. 7 of those people, by the way, ended up being roommates of mine, at least at one point or another. So, and most of them were on the 3rd floor, believe it or not. So it was the dorm experience, as awful as it can be, it can also bring forth a lot of good things when used correctly. When used incorrectly, it can ruin you, and that's usually finding out too late who you're associating with, and maybe screwing around on the studying side, or focusing way too much on the fun. Oh, high school's done, now I'm just gonna have a good time and take my classes in a lighter way than I did in high school. Because a lot of these guys, we all kind of had this sense of, we're going to work hard enough in high school so that we can get into a decent university, so we can get a decent job. That's kind of the idea, but there is this false hope that a lot of 18-year-olds have that, we're now at college, it can be slower pace, and it's farther from the truth. Freshman year is designed really to help integrate you into the school, less than focusing on pummeling you with hard classwork. So other than the dorm life and lower div, as far as the mentorship aspect, how did it all start for you in fall 2012?
Fall 2012. Fall quarter of our 3rd year, right? So I think it started because I got an email from the organization. They said that we're having this mentorship program. As you mentioned, I think they had previous iterations of the program in previous years, but I honestly didn't really pay too much attention to that stuff. But my 3rd year, I did. And so I decided to just go for it. There is this mentorship program, and they claim that I'll be paired up with a mentee, even though I may not have any previous experience as a mentee myself because of, my isolation those first 2 years. Apparently that wasn't too much of a big deal, so I just signed up for it. again with the thinking that I wanted to really, I wanted to maybe help a poor lost soul that was in a very similar situation as myself, those first 2 years. Fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, depending on your perspective, I didn't really find any poor lost souls that needed my help. Everyone seemed really on top of their stuff. But that was my thinking, coming into the mentorship program in fall of 2012.
I see. So in my case, it was, I got the same email because we're on the same emailing list at the time. And I got it and I go, oh, they're short mentors. Oh, well, yeah, I guess I could do that. And there's only 2 of them. Oh, I can handle 2 of them. That 2's fine. Because the way they made it sound like was we need someone who can handle like 8 because we're really short. But they said 2 and I go, oh, you're overreacting. I got you. Like 2. So we met up at, what was it, that Indian restaurant or something?
Yes.
Remember that?
At U-Mall, yes.
Yeah.
It's closed now, but yes,
What?
yes.
Yeah, Deus has it's a revolving door there. It's hard to keep business. So that's where I met Andrew, which is now called Gen 1. That was a joke later, that would have been 2014, and Generation 1 of Jacob's mentorship program, which I thought was really funny. I think that's stopped at this point because it's kind of hard to keep track of what gen's what. I think I can confirm 4, but that's getting off topic. And then I had someone else named Alex who was very similar to me in the sense that kind of understand what was going on fall quarter and still trying to integrate herself into the program. So between those 2, it was somebody who was, yeah, I'm kind of familiar, but and I don't think I'll have a problem making friends, but I might want to back off a little bit, which is interesting because he kind of took your approach, but with a twist. So not back off all the way, but back off enough where I can make some friends, not a lot. And it was funny because in his case, because he kept staying with AIChE, he got a lot anyway. So even somebody who wanted to just try and keep it small, it didn't work, which is good for him because that actually was taking your advice unintended. So, and then with Alex, it was harder for her to integrate herself in, and she ended up leaving the next year. But she was so thankful that she at least had an outlet, which is what the mentorship program provides, which I really like because that fulfills more of the problems that we ran into of how do we maintain people within the chemical engineering world that are undergrads that still want to get out into the world and do something with their lives, which we keep saying that you're here for a reason. You're blowing a lot of money and you've got to invest a lot of time. You can have these thoughts of maybe I shouldn't be here, or I'm not qualified enough, or I'm not good enough, but don't let that stop you from working hard and maintaining the course that may put you on the path to success later. And that's something we kept trying to bring up because a lot of those thoughts really do paralyze people. They paralyzed me. Sophomore year, I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I wasn't smart enough, and it did affect my performance because when I take on organic chemistry or take on physics, I'm not good enough for this yet, but I'll give it an honest try. But that attitude of, okay, I'm just going to leap at it with this half-hearted approach versus the full-on, I don't care if I fail, but I need to learn this. I learned more how to do it the latter way, which is putting in your full effort. But it didn't start there. And I think it's because there's this real problem with the core system of, and this is part of how they test you, is it's always moving. You got 10 weeks in the final week, 10 plus 1 in the chamber, and it's always moving. So there's this real nihilism that can come up of, well, it doesn't matter anyway, this quarter is just going to be over like that. So it would be best, though, to put those thoughts aside and still do your best, even if the quarter's going like water through your hands. So, you were going to say something about some other things you got to do in the mentorship program, or?
Let's see. So, for me, I wasn't very comfortable with AIChE at the time, mainly because I was isolated those first 2 years, and people already knew each other by the time I came on in my third year. I was just, that guy that people recognize from classes, but, why am I here now, like 2 years later? Or that's kind of the feeling I got. I'm pretty sure no one really thought that, but I just didn't feel very comfortable at some of those events sometimes. So even though there were a number of mentorship events, like for example, back during our time, there was like the Iron Chef competition. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I think they still did that
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yes.
There was a 2018 one I got to go to.
Yeah.
And we should talk about that in the second part, because
Sure.
that was a really pivotal moment for some people in the mentorship program later, which I'll be happy to talk about. Remind me when we get there.
Sure. Yeah. So so because of that, I mainly emphasize to my mentees, hey, let's actually hang out outside of school. Yes, I understand that there are all these events happening, sponsored and hosted by AIChE, which is great. But I would feel more comfortable talking and just hanging out outside of those events, just grabbing lunch or dinner downtown, grabbing coffee or boba. That was actually my main thing with my mentees. Just have some time out to just either, I could be an outlet to talk about all of your concerns, rantings, etc., etc. I can go on about my life and talk about my experiences, etc., etc. And so that was how I approached mentorship.
Yeah, giving them a spot to think out what they need to do is part of it. Yeah, and then being able to take them away from the college experience a little bit, just kind of we don't have to be in that space if you don't want to be. And then being able to give them anything that you may have on hand, as far as, I took that class too. Here, you might need to know these 3 things before we even start talking about the introduction, which is something that the quarter system is, we noticed a lot, which is they just dive in. And there may be 3 important questions that you need to answer first before you even start thinking about what the class has to do with your life. For me, that would have been like, not Chem 2A, because they actually do a pretty good job at the intro. Because they do. They really go slow at first. It's when they get into like organic chemistry. So you just dive in, you go, what's up with all these reactions going on? You kind of understand that you're in a chemistry class, but what's the significance behind it, right? But if they start talking about synthesis first, and this is how we were able to develop certain products, and then over time we were able to actually get the proof of the concept and write it down. Okay, I'd be a lot more interested in what's going on, because now I understand where it's for. The NMR thing, I remember when that popped up. Remember when that popped up? There's like 4 different graphs. I think IR, HNMR, and all those different graphs. I'm going, what are these for? Oh, it's for spectroscopy. We're not going to use that. And I felt rather, it was a waste of my time. Like physics 110B. That felt like a waste of time.
No, wait, Chem 110B.
Yeah, Chem 110.
Physical chemistry.
Yeah, physical chemistry. Did I say physics? Yeah, no,
Yes.
Yeah, chemistry 110B. Dang, a waste of time. Absolute waste of time. But I guess it was, if you were into that sort of thing about all the molecule designs and structures, fine. But for us, that might as well be on a different planet. But did you have any other challenges going through the mentorship program that you were running into, Andy?
Well, challenges. I guess one of the challenges was a little bit of doubting myself a bit, because I was definitely not like the best student ever my first 2 years. So who am I to give advice to these freshmen and sophomores when I myself didn't really succeed that well. Of course, you could go from the logic that, okay, I've been through it now. Now I can give them what I've learned, what I regret, what they can do to not repeat my mistakes. But there's still that doubt there. I'm not that star student. I don't have these amazing internships and lab experiences that some of these other mentors may have. So I felt a little bit, I guess, underqualified as a mentee. As a mentor sometimes.
Yeah, and that's a common problem within the mentorship program, which is why a lot of people don't even do it. And then we end up in this position where they're short mentors, and then the cycle repeats. I hope that we can develop something for them, or even just give some ideas for them, where you can take people who aren't really a mentor figure, but you can get them the tools they need to say, you know what, I'm not really a mentor, but I can at least do the job of getting these lower division kids up to speed, which is a lot of what it is. It's coming alongside and helping them out and a few things here or there. It's not being a parent to them by no means. It's really just giving them that extra 5% boost that, oh, I feel empowered now. Someone actually cares about me. I feel valued, even though I have all these thoughts about not being good enough and I'm not smart enough, or I'm way in over my head. I feel supported enough to continue in this program, and I can develop the friends here from it. And then they can do the same encouragement to the next lower division people, which I think we forget how cycle driven the university life is. Every year you got new people coming in and new people coming out. And it's a high turnover. So you need to be able to train up these guys a lot. So having an SOP for that would be really good. Did you have any successful mentees in your undergrad years?
Successful mentees. Well, shout out to Mr. Joey Sue.
Yeah.
So you're working with Joey, right?
Dude, he's on my shift. I couldn't believe it. When I heard he knew you, I go, wait a minute. Is Andy from my class? Sure enough, yeah. Andy's from my class. Yeah. Joey Sue, how the heck did you end up in where I'm working? I was surprised too. Because before he was in Genentech, I think. So.
Yes.
So
Joey Sue, he, I guess, fortunately didn't need any help whatsoever. Really on top of his stuff, really knew his stuff very well. Didn't really need any guidance, but we did actually end up being really good friends. Like, we still talk pretty much a lot. Like, we still text each other. We still contact each other a lot. It was a success, mainly because I did find a much needed friend out of that whole experience. As I mentioned, my first 2 years, isolated, not that many friends, but because of this mentorship program, even though I couldn't really be like the greatest mentor ever to Joey, we became really close out of that. And so that was probably the biggest success I had from the program as an undergraduate.
yeah, if there's anything I've learned about Joey, even working with him from time to time, the guy has the means to be able to just get it done. And even in the small things, the faithfulness in the small things, I think, is where a lot of people brush it off and they say, that doesn't matter. It actually does matter, because when you're faithful in the small things, people can trust you with the big things. And then you can nail both instead of just nailing the big things and then saying, look how good I am. He doesn't do that. And that's probably one of the successful markers I've seen at AFC right now. So that's been really good to have him, especially on my shift, because that means there's 3 lines that are just handled. For me, that's good. So shout out to Joey, big time.
Yes, you're great, Joey. You're awesome. Yes, so Joey was my biggest success, mainly because he was already pretty good as is. Yeah.
I gotta say, for my biggest success was Daniel Crozier, big time. He's been on this podcast a couple of times. In fact, he was just on it yesterday. So Daniel is by far, he didn't need it either. He didn't need mentorship either, but he took it in nonetheless, which was interesting. So he took it in. He really dug the style. And then from that, he goes, you know what? We can do this too. And then he turns the class of 2016 into just some next level stuff in the mentorship group. He just carried it forward. So the family he and I helped build, he just carried it on and then just kept the momentum rolling. And then Brian Martinez did the same, not only during his class year in 2016, but when he had to return because he took a nice like year and a half break, he did it again in 2018 and had like a second wind of it. He could have done, I think he could have done better in his junior year, but other than that, after he took his break and he came back, the guy just resumed right back where he was. And he said when mentorship was done in 2018, he's like, oh, man, I'm kind of tired. I kind of need a break. And so he got his break, and now he's working over in the Bay Area, and it's been good. But yeah, Daniel for sure has been, he was right there. As soon as he was able to gain a little bit of responsibility within the I guess the mentorship family, he just was running with it, and then he just needed a little bit of guidance here or there, and he was on his own. It was great. And then people would come to him, and he just became another super mentor. I just loved it. I think that's one of the most valuable things one of the most valuable people rather that I've been able to work with as a mentor to mentee relationship, and now we're peers. So he doesn't need me any more than I need him, but we're both still talking to each other from time to time, and I'm just really glad that he was able to make it. So to you, Daniel, thank you very much, because that made the mentorship experience a lot less frightening, and I'm so glad you're able to learn from what you were able to. And passing it down, I could not believe it when when I left, it didn't just all fall apart. Now you kept it going, and that was so important. Because it helps so many other people that I couldn't have been able to reach without your help. So thank you. So with those people in mind, did you have any other issues with the mentorship family and getting people involved? Or do you think they were pretty cooperative once they were with you?
So I think the hard part is just getting them to meet for the first time. I can tell you a very short story from fall 2012. So again, fall 2012 was also when I was paired up with Joey Sue. But as you mentioned, we had two mentees, right? We had two mentees. So Joey Sue was one of them. And then my second mentee, we had trouble just trying to find a time to meet. We almost met, but then she backed out last minute. Sorry, I have some sort of other thing going on. And then I was like, okay, sure. Just let me know again when you're free and we can try again. And she never reached out again. And at that point, I was a bit busy myself to reach out again. And we didn't really try again. Yeah. And unfortunately, when I did look her up again, I think a year later, I think she had left Davis. And so that was a little bit unfortunate. So I'm not sure if I could have been there for her. Maybe she was that lost soul that I was looking for originally when I joined this program. But because I guess our schedules didn't match up, because after a couple of months, both of us stopped trying to get in contact with each other, it just didn't work out. And it turns out that after about a year or so, she was no longer at Davis. So... Dude. That was a little bit unfortunate. I wish things could have changed, but I do take that in stride now, and I try to get that experience to help me, to help shape how I interact with my future mentees.
You know, that brings up, so you had another mentee as well that quit Davis. You know, it's funny though, sometimes the people who don't make it, they sometimes take out more out of the mentorship program than people who just were there along for the ride, which is so interesting to watch, because this didn't happen to me just in AIChE. This actually happened to me at AFC as well. There was somebody who he needed to leave for other reasons, but he actually shook my hand and said, thank you very much for investing in me these last few months from time to time. It made a difference. Thank you very much. And eye contact, handshake. It was one of those, whoa, I know what this kind of moment feels like. This is kind of like when Alex left the university in 2012. Both of them had this same sense of, they didn't make it all the way through, but they actually took away more than some of my most success. I'd say almost I put on par with some of my best mentees. So I'd say it's not necessarily a failure if you still get to invest in them, because they can take it with you. And that was I got the similar impression though of, they failed. They didn't make it. Oh, people cannot make it. Well, we need to be around ready to rock and roll then, because before you know it, there may be somebody who needs help. And there's a lot of stress out there for college now. I mean, this real sense of not being able to fail, that's a real thing. The GPA days of having like a 2.5 and saying, that's fine, that's over. That's been over. We saw it already starting to go away when we were there. We're going, crap, if you want to go into grad school, you need like a 3.5 ready to rock and roll, if not higher. So you can't just have a 2.9 and just write it. And for me, that's what I eventually had to climb back up to, like a 2.98 at the end of my college career. But when I was applying for jobs, it wasn't 2.98, it was like 2.7. So I had to put my upper div GPA instead, and because there's other ways you can frame it, but that's fine. Just keep in mind, advertise what you are saying about yourself on your resume correctly. Otherwise, you may find that people don't like you because you're lying. So for me, it was, this is my upper class, and then compare it to my overall, and then it was a way to at least show improvement. And I think that's the best thing you can do. And I told this to a lot of mentees. One of the best things you can do is if you want to show improvement and you screwed up in lower div, which a lot of us do, if you've got anything in upper div that's worth being happy about, smiling about, put that on there for your upper div GPA and compare it to your regular. So that way you're not saying you didn't do it. It's just here. This is you're seeing the comparison. If it's really bad, don't put it on at all. But you can still at least clarify what you're advertising on there, because otherwise they may get the wrong impression of GPA 3.5. Okay, of what quarter though? Is that the whole thing? Is that if they look at it that way, they may not like it. I'd say if you risk it, that's totally on you. And I bet some people have gotten away with, that was only one quarter, I got a 3.7. But man, the minute they figure out you're lying, I mean, trust is big in the workforce. You can't trust somebody. Well, what's the point? And we try to do that in the mentorship program. Develop that sense of trust and brotherhood, and getting people together with that same goal of, you don't have to compete against people as much as you might think you do. It's really more competing against the university and its challenges than your fellow compatriots. Does feel that way though when the class is curved though. So 500 kids in your first general chemistry class. That I understand that, but nonetheless, I'm glad you at least learned from that gal that didn't make it through the program, because some people keep making the same mistake over and over again. The corrective action, preventive action thing, we say that in work a lot, but it actually does prevent a lot of mistakes if you do it right. So did you end up continuing to do mentorship in your senior year?
Yes, I did actually. So I did continue that, and it went, I guess, better than my junior year. As in, I did actually get a chance to meet everyone in my family my senior year, unlike my junior year. But kind of like with Joey back in my junior year, I think everyone that was in my family my senior year also was pretty on top of their stuff, and I really couldn't find too much to mentor them about. They seemed like they knew what they were doing, and again, a little bit more of that, I guess, imposter syndrome sort of feeling, where I'm sort of like, well, like, these underclassmen are doing better than how I performed back when I was in their position. So what kind of right does that give me to give them advice when they're doing better than how I was back then? Yeah. So that same feeling again. But at that point, though, I did also emphasize other things too. Again, the social aspect and whatnot. But at that point, I was pondering a career change for myself. Even though I was going to finish my degree in in ChemE, I was pondering going into viticulture, which I'll talk about much later. And so another thing I did want to emphasize to some of these underclassmen was, even if you do get a degree in chemical engineering, you don't really have to stay there forever. And so my mentees senior year, they didn't quite see that just yet. I admit, so if it was me as 18 years old or 19 years old, back then I was under the impression that if you choose this major, how can you ever like change into another career later on?
And then they give that impression that there's this real sense that you are locked into chemical engineering forever. And then they also try and sell, why would you even want to leave even if you tried? It'd be too hard, and you might as well just stick around. And that's great for the department, so that way they can keep their student turnover a little higher than if they just said you need to get out immediately. But nonetheless, it's not the right case. I mean, you really you did it. I mean,
yes,
you were able to get into viticulture later.
Yes,
so.
And so yeah, senior year, that was another one of my my words of wisdom too. You're not stuck here. But other than that, everyone there seemed to know what they were doing, and I'm proud of them, and they're doing quite well to this day. Yes.
Man.
How about yourself?
Well, so in senior year, the mentorship program changed a lot.
Yes.
So we went from this 1 to 2 mentees per mentor, and they changed it into a family structure. So now you've got at least 2 mentors and about 4 to 6 different mentees. And that's pretty slick, because now you've got not just one person to ask, but 2, and you've got a higher ratio of people you can hang out with that are within your same family. So if someone was being kind of strange in the mentorship family, you can kind of talk to somebody about it, and it wasn't just this random lunch that, what was that all about? So there is this accountability that comes up from it when you put more people together, which I'd say is one of the positives. One of the negatives is if you got 2 bad mentors and now you're stuck with just a family that just doesn't work. I mean, it might as well not even be one. But in our case, I had Daniel Aliman, who I hope to get on here next month. Yeah, he was my partner in crime on the mentorship family, and we both signed up for it together. And it didn't originally work like that. It was me and Taner from our class.
Yes,
yeah, I remember Taner Corral.
Yes.
I remember him in years, but back then he saw that we were both wanting to do it, and he goes, I signed us up to be partnered up, and I go, that's cool, let's do it. Later down the line, Daniel and Yong, he was a junior at the time, so class 2015. Daniel and I figure out maybe we can do this super family. So it was at that point where we met up with both of our families for billiards, for pool at the MU. They still have it, and they moved the tables around a lot since we've been there, but we got to do that. And all the mentees were getting along pretty chipper. They were pretty chipper about being there. So Daniel and I already got this impression that maybe we should make this even bigger. So we combined families, and then before we knew it, that was the inner circle that started the mentorship family, and eventually just call it the family, which is really funny because Gen 1 was the guy that goes, yeah, it sounds like you're working for the mafia or something. It's like, no, but we do services, and we do help out people, and we show up, and all of a sudden there is this favor for favor thing going on, which people really like that, because there was this hub that developed from it where, hey, Jake didn't know the answer, but Daniel did. Or Daniel didn't know the answer, but Jacob did. And eventually the mentees had it with themselves. Hey, Daniel didn't know, but Bryan did. So there was this real network of, if you go to the family, you're going to get your problem figured out. And it didn't have to be about school. School was obviously part of it. That's why we're there. But the real slick part about it was, hey, we want to do something Friday, but we know what we're going to do. And then we come up with something and we go do it. We go hang out for food or whatnot. The ChemE car thing was the other branch of the mentorship family that didn't merge until the next quarter. because I kind of want to keep them separate. ChemE was more, it was, at least at the time, it was more on the club itself. But I realized that we weren't getting that much steam fall quarter. So I realized early on, we need to get these people ready to be a team now. So more on the inventory and doing some of the stuff that we need for the safety documentation, trying to figure out what we even need. A lot of it's just taking account and getting used to our team and ironing out a lot of the technical skills they may need later in winter quarter and spring when we finally put everything together. And that was rather well thought out on my part, much to my surprise, because I didn't think it was that thought out. But how many problems we got to iron out on Excel, Word, how we were going to work together, who was going to do what, division of labor, all of that was able to be worked out early before the real problems happened. And that was so slick because once we actually did run into real problems, we already knew how to act as a team, and we just kind of rolled with it. Even though we didn't quite know how to solve it yet, we at least knew who was going to do what division of labor and how to help people. And that was so cool because usually what ends up happening is they give you the work, and then you got to figure out the team stuff as you go. And this time it was more of we figured out who the team was, and then we got the work. And that was really cool that we were able to do something like that. And eventually, people from ChemE and the mentorship family figured out I was the same guy. The mentor over here with these guys, and then the ChemE leader over here. And then they said, we just want to be in your family. And much to my surprise, I was saying, well, not really. I kind of like having the two different groups. They forced me to turn into one group, and then it turned into this super family. So we've got already a merged family to begin with, which I'm going to, that's already a lot to handle, two different groups. Now it's this big family. So you've got people like Edgar, who was on the podcast, and Daniel, who was in the mentorship family. All of them are now communicating together by mid-winter quarter. Spring quarter, it's in full swing. It's just everybody, there's this complete match of people going on. The study groups are massive. That second floor of the engineering library, we're using that all the time. They figured out my spot, and then now they're all here. And it was so different because now when I'm working on my stuff, there's like 10 mentees on a bench over there. And now I'm going over there and saying hello and seeing what they're working on. And there was this real synergy of, oh, I can't solve my problem right now. Let me go talk to my mentees. Oh, they can't solve their problem. They come talk to me. And they had this real value that come from it of we're not in this alone. They're working on harder stuff, but we got to talk about so with Pablo, he was one of the original mentees in my group. And he asked me about a Reynolds number from ECM5. Remember, because we don't know what this is. So even little things about this is what Reynolds number is. This is how we use it in fluid mechanics. This is the reason why they wanted to bring it up to you early, because it's an easy relationship, but you don't have any context, so it's hard. And breaking that wall was so cool because now all of a sudden they understand the significance behind it enough where they're interested on their own. And now they're running for it. And if I saw myself running for it in ECM5, I'd be kind of spooked because that was one of the least interesting classes I ever had freshman year. And nonetheless, there goes Pablo. He's going after it. And he didn't care about it at all that first day. So now all of a sudden he's got value for a class he didn't have. And I think that's one of the themes of the mentorship program that's so cool is you take something that has not that much value on its own, but you invest in it and cultivate it enough where it will. And then they have their own motivations and then they run off. So that's what happened with my mentorship experience, which was, I didn't expect, this wasn't planned, didn't want it to be this way, but this is the way it worked out. A lot of people got help from it. You could argue that because I invested in it so much, when I had to leave it all behind, it hurt a lot. And it wasn't the same when I came back a year later, and when I went into upstream oil and I came back. It wasn't the same because I wasn't in their same class. I wasn't in the same undergrad experience. I wasn't their mentor in the same sense that I was right there beside him in the engineering library 20 hours a week or 30 hours a week. Now I'm this guy that works at a different place that's still in the same town. That immediately disqualifies me from being their first point of contact, which was probably for the best because they needed people who were right there with them. What I was really happy about, though, was from time to time when things really got bad and they needed mentorship in some way, or they said, Jake, I'm losing it here. Junior year sucks. We did have a few gem moments.
Oh.
And that was so cool, but they weren't back to back to back to back how it felt like in senior year of 2014. And of course it wasn't going to be that way. They've got their own lives to work. And the thing about mentorship that I really liked about was it instilled the responsibility that they didn't need me as much as they needed the inspiration or the cultivation. So once they were cultivated and they had enough to work on, they took on their own responsibility and dealt with it. And that, I think, is more important than them always needing you. So, yeah, that's the story, though.
Wow. Well, that's very inspiring, actually. Like, your experience senior year sounded really nice. I had nothing quite on that level, but I'm very glad that you did. And then you were able to, I guess, influence so many people down the line.
I think it ended up being about 30 people at the end who were actually involved with our mentorship family from time to time. So, because they kept asking if they wanted people in, and you got somebody who actually needs it. Well, we can handle that. We didn't have a capacity at the time, so I just said, yeah, they're in. And there was this thing called the family where they understood. Eventually, people understood what that meant. And it wasn't the mentorship family, that was in brackets. They understood it as, okay, if you're associating with this family, something good's gonna happen, which for a lower classman is all they really need to figure out what the heck's going on. And you're taking all these introverted kids, extroverted kids, didn't matter. There was this real sense of unity. Granted, because it changed and it got dynamic as people took it over, there was inevitable conflict that was going to come from it. You can't put all these people in here and expect it to be heaven. And we kind of already saw that when it was happening in 2014. So in 2014, 2015, you really started to see the pressure of junior year on the class of 2016. You got a lot of different conflicting personalities, and they had to figure out how their groups were going to work again. Because the way their groups worked in sophomore year is not going to be the same way as junior year. And that was the same for us. Of course it was. And for me, I had transfer friends in junior and senior year that I worked with a lot. Steve Lewis and Carm Knockwall and Chris Brown, all these people I worked with a lot. And I worked with some of our class that was non-transfers, but the ratio for me was just radically higher on the transfer students. And I think it was because that same mentorship gearbox in my head, because they just showed up. So giving them a little bit of cultivation on some things to expect around Davis, for them, even though they may have been 6 years older than me, they appreciated so much that it would just end up being a natural friendship. And that was a big win, having people like Matt and Steve and Sean, all of these people, and Daniel Alemon and Bilal being two others. Daniel Alemon, who's the guy who I ended up doing the mentorship program with. So it was an amazing time, but keep in mind all the crap that was going on in between. Sometimes it's hard to see the value in it when time's going so fast. But I'm glad we were able to get to see that value in it. But when you finally had all the distractions put away and you were able to see it in frames, which is when it's all over, that's when it really was. This moment was so important, and I'm glad I recognized it then because it's way more valuable now that it's over. So, and because of what happened back then, I have this same conviction that maybe they can be helped too, even through a podcast like this, or being able to show some lessons learned and break the proximity barrier with old mentees or fellow classmates like yourself. And heck, we broke it today just by being in the same room, so it's been fantastic. Can we go into your graduate school experience now with
sure.
how you got in and some of the mentorship experiences there? This is the part where I don't have all the questions for it, but I think I can at least end with questions 8 through 10.
Sure.
But we'll sandwich it with your graduate experiences with
sure.
mentorship. So
Yeah.
go ahead. So how'd you get involved with viticulture?
How did I get involved with viticulture? I'll try to keep it relatively short. It can be a very long story, but I've told it enough now to enough people that I think I can pick out the good points.
Okay.
So, as I sort of hinted at in my previous discussion, I wasn't really feeling too hot in chemical engineering. I could do it. I could pass my classes. I could do the assignments and not fail. Probably not the best mindset, but hey, I was passing. I was getting my C's and sometimes B minuses if I was lucky.
2.7 for a B minus. I'll never forget that. 2.7. These guys that's a nightmare.
And so, yeah, I wasn't really feeling it, but I couldn't really find myself in any other field or any other major. And because, as I said, I was doing decent in ChemE, I was surviving in ChemE, I just decided to just keep with it and just keep on going. Again, because I couldn't find anything else that really spoke to me. So that was pretty much my first 2 years. And then my third year, so fall 2012, fall quarter of my third year, I kind of serendipitously took Ven 3, which is Intro to Winemaking, as a GE class. I didn't really take it on purpose. I was going to actually just have it be filler units. I was going to drop it and take an upper division English class as part of our requirements. But then I got really kind of lazy and didn't want to deal with waitlisting and whatnot. So I just kept with that Intro to Wine class. And I took it, and after like 2 or 3 lectures, I was like, wow, there's a whole academic field that's devoted to grapes and wine. And I thought that was incredible. The stuff that I was learning in that class actually was interesting to me. And that was the first time in 2 years at that point that I felt something. I felt some sort of connection, some sort of passion almost for an academic field. I had never felt it before in my chem, OChem, physics, ChemE, AIChE, or whatever. Those were just classes to me. But Ven 3 actually became something more than that. And so I decided to jump on that chance. For the past 2 years at that point, I was kind of lost and kind of wandering around in college. But now that I have this field, this academic field that I actually feel something for, I should at least try it out and see if it actually works for me as a career later on. And so I decided to just go out and email a whole bunch of professors in the Department of Viticulture and Enology and just be honest with them. Hi, I'm Andy. I'm a third year undergraduate in chemical engineering. However, I'm taking Ven 3 right now, and it's really interesting to me. I was wondering if there was any kind of hands-on experience that I could get in your lab where I can actually explore this field a bit more. And a number of the professors that I contacted either politely said that, sorry, we don't really have anything for you. A number of them didn't even respond. But there was one professor, Dr. Andy Walker, that just simply emailed me and said, come see me in my office. That was it. I was like, wow, okay, sure. And I came to his office. He's a very busy man, so it took several attempts to actually get him, to find him. But we talked, and I was very blunt with him. I told him that, yes, I'm a student in chemical engineering, but I'm not really feeling it, but I do feel something towards this new field of viticulture and enology. And then he told me that he did appreciate my story, and he actually believes that if you're a student in the UC system, and you want to get involved in research, you should have the opportunity. That was his philosophy. And I respect that so much. To this day, I still respect that so much. And so he found me something in his lab. After, I guess, he mass emailed his lab, seeing if anyone needed any help, if anyone needed an assistant. He did get back to me a few weeks later, saying that there was a researcher in his lab who did need an assistant. And her name was Dr. Cecilia Aguero, and she and I met up, and I became her assistant. And one thing led to another, and I stayed there for pretty much the rest of my undergrad. She was an amazing, I guess, mentor. She taught me everything that I had to know about grapes and wine. Not only to help her out in her work, but also because she knew of my intentions to maybe explore this field a bit more as a potential career path. So I helped her out in the greenhouses, out in the field, in the lab. She taught me all these techniques, taught me so many things. And after about a year or two of working with her, I was like, okay, I think I actually do want to transition into viticulture now as my career path. And however, at that point, when I did have that feeling, when I did make that decision for myself, I was pretty much kind of almost done with all my requirements for the major of chemical engineering. At that point, I think it was either, I basically came across this conclusion that I wanted to do this, I think by the end of my third year or so. So by that point, we already did stuff like AIChE 140, 141, a little bit of thermo, all this stuff, right? So I already got through all those classes. I passed all the classes. So if I were to just switch to a viticulture and enology major now, all that time would have been, I guess, wasted. And so now my plan was to finish my bachelor's in chemical engineering and then go to grad school and pursue a master's in viticulture and enology. That was my plan at the time. And so I went through my fourth year with that in mind. I was gonna, go to grad school in something very different. And then this is a bit tangential, but then at the time during our year, there was an opportunity to actually double major in both chemical engineering and biochemical, in biochemie as well, ChemE and biochemie. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, technically, the world of wine, the world of enology, is all about fermentation, and that's essentially a major component of biochemical engineering. And I thought it would be a good, I guess, addition to my undergraduate studies to add that component into my major as well. So in the end, I added a double major in biochemie, mainly because of the whole wine potential aspect. And so I did that. And then, however, one thing is that because we had such a packed schedule as ChemE majors, we basically didn't have much time for any other fun extra classes. Some other majors out there have time for stuff like tractor driving and whatnot. We don't have that kind of time as chemical engineers.
Unless you want to force it in on, shoehorn it into your schedule.
Exactly. So as chemies, we only have time for our requirements, our GEs, and maybe one or two classes for fun if you have the space for that. But that's kind of it. Just to give some numbers about that, I think you need 180 units to graduate from Davis. I think 180. Pretty sure it's 180. But I think
that sounds right.
But then the ChemE major requirements already add up to, I think, 182 or 184 or something above 180.
Yeah, glad we don't have a unit cap still, right?
Yeah, exactly. While other majors have a total requirement total of like 120 or 140 or something. So they have to take extra classes to kind of like get up to that 180, or they use their AP units from back in high school. Nowadays, I think there's a weird thing with AP units, but at least back then, people would do that with their AP units.
Well, they cash in all the time if they got 4s and 5s, especially with 5s. I mean, come on, that's free units right there.
Exactly. So I guess my point there is that because I wanted to go to grad school in viticulture and enology, I needed all these prerequisite classes, stuff like economics, stuff like genetics, plant sciences, and I didn't really have time for that. In my intended 4-year schedule, so I decided to stay a 5th year to just fulfill all those prereqs. Also finish up my double major because I did have to take 1 or 2 extra classes for BioChemE, and also use that time to take my Econ 1A, my Stats 120 or whatever it was for my grad school requirements or my grad school prereqs. But I will say though, even though I did graduate, I think with my bachelor's in June 2015, I still consider myself like class of 2014 because I was with you guys the whole way, right?
You were.
Yeah, and I finished all my ChemE requirements by June 2014. I could have just left Davis with a ChemE major like you did, like everyone else did in June 2014, but I decided for some reason I should stay a bit longer. So stayed a 5th year. Did that stuff. That's where mentorship actually. I still try to participate in the program as well. But it was at this point where I got the feeling that because I was no longer a legitimate student in chemical engineering, my value as a mentor sort of went down, maybe in the eyes of my potential mentees. Like, for example, when I was at the speed dating night for my 5th year to kind of meet people, when I told people that I was actually intending to go to grad school to study grapes, for some of these students, they had this kind of face of like confusion, of like, why are you here? Like,
you're not going into oil and pharmaceuticals like everybody else.
Exactly. Like, why am I here? And so so because of that, my mind jumped to the conclusion that like maybe these students also don't see much value in me because like I'm not going into private industry, so I can't really help them network that much. Our interests are now different now. What can I provide, etc., etc. But I still tried. One thing that I'll admit right now is that I actually don't quite remember my mentorship family from my 5th year. That in itself may say something. I think we didn't really have a chance to do too much during my 5th year. Either it was because these mentees didn't really reach out too much to me. I will admit, I can guarantee that I do try to reach out to all my mentees every single year. There's never been a year where I don't try. However, my 5th year, I admit, maybe I tried a little bit less because I got that sort of feeling from them. And I think I didn't really get a chance to meet up with a lot of them. I do take it back. I was able to meet up with one of my mentees my 5th year. She lived in Quarto, and at that time I lived at University Court, which was right next to Quarto. And then we went out for boba for like one day or one night, and then after that she never really came in contact with me ever again. And then my other my other mentees during that year, I think we had a little group chat, and I was able to add everyone to the group chat. That actually was a bit of a trouble trying to get everyone's contact information, get them to actually like respond to my email. And then we tried setting up some sort of like dinner or lunch or boba or whatever. But again, I had one response, and she and I did have a nice boba date. But after that, we never really talked again. Again, it just comes down to the whole how I feel a bit of lesser value because of my different career interests at that point. So that was my 5th year. This story is going on a bit long already, so I'll try to keep it a little short. I'll try to at least. But so I was going to apply to grad school, that master's in viticulture and enology. So and at that point, I was still working with Dr. Walker's lab. I was still working under Dr. Aguero, still her assistant. And so I was talking to them about my grad school plans. I have this intention of doing a master's in viticulture and enology. And I talked to Dr. Walker about this, and he said that I should make a major, but not that major, decision for myself. Do I really want to focus on the grape, the grapevine, the vineyard aspect of viticulture and enology, or the wine aspect, the fermentation, the stuff that's a bit more related to my background? So grapes or wine, that was the two choices. He said that that I should make this choice because the viticulture and enology master's program, they have a huge, bias towards the wine side of things. Most people that graduate out of that master's program end up working for a winery. They end up, becoming winemakers, etc., etc. Very few of them actually go out into the grape side of things. So again, the classes tend to be very heavily focused on winemaking, and that sort of stuff. On the flip side, if I want to go into the grape side of things, there does exist another program called Horticulture and Agronomy. So it sounds like a very general kind of like plant science based program. However, if I did that program, the Horticulture and Agronomy program, I could specialize in viticulture and really focus on grape growing and vineyard management and that sort of stuff. So at the time, Dr. Walker's lab, his lab is pretty much a grape lab. His lab very rarely touches the wine side of things. He does. They do some wine things, but for the most part, they're really focused on the grape growing aspect and the grape breeding aspect. And so, with all this in mind, I was like, okay, well, I spent the past 3 years at that point, or 2.5 years or so, in this grape breeding lab. All of my experience is with grapes. I know I do love working with grapes. I have very little experience with wine. Do I want to make that risk to transition into wine? After pondering things a bit more, I still didn't know what to do. And so I was like, you know what? I'll just apply to both programs and that I'll see what happens. Maybe they'll make that decision for me. Maybe only one program will accept me. And there you go. I don't have to make this hard decision. And then another aspect too is that Dr. Walker also mentioned to me that there's no PhD program in the viticulture and enology program. They only have a master's. However, if I wanted to go for a PhD, if I was more research oriented, I should think about a PhD. And the Horticulture and Agronomy program does have a PhD program, and that program does not require a master's degree prior to admission. So I could go straight from my bachelor's into that PhD. And I'm like, okay, another decision to make as well. So in the end, I decided to apply for the master's in viticulture and enology, then the PhD in horticulture and agronomy. That way I have these two pretty distinct choices.
Fate will decide.
Yes, yeah. Fate will decide. The admissions committee will decide for me. I don't have to which one do I choose? But because I was applying to another program, more prerequisites at that point. I should take more plant science courses. I should finish the Intro to Bio series, take some biochemistry as well. So luckily, I was staying that 5th year anyways, so that didn't matter. I got a bit more. Knowledge and background in the biological sciences. And at that point too, I guess just another point to make, I did add a minor to my degree since I was taking all these classes anyways. I was taking genetics, biochem. I finished all the Biz 2 series. I decided to add a minor in biosci, in biological sciences, because might as well, I'm doing all this anyways. So I was doing all that stuff. I got the decisions in March or April or so, somewhere around that time, March or April of 2015. And fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, I got into both programs. Yay! Both programs wanted me. Oh my god. Of course, it's very exciting, very fortunate. There are many people out there who would have loved to be in my position. But at that point, I was like, oh god, what do I do now?
Fate didn't decide.
Fate didn't decide for me. Now I have to be the one in charge of my own fate, of my own life. God. Okay, so I had these 2 admissions letters like in my hands, and now I gotta make a decision. Do I want to go for a master's focusing on wine, or do I want to go for a PhD focusing on grapes? That was what it boiled down to. Ultimately, in the end, I chose the grape side of things, because again, all my experience so far had been in grape growing, grape breeding. I already knew everyone in my lab. I wanted to continue working with Dr. Walker and Dr. Aguero if I had the opportunity to. And I knew that because our lab didn't really do much in terms of wine, it would be a better fit to work with grapes if I did want to keep working with Dr. Walker and Dr. Aguero. And there it goes. I made my decision. I actually remember, so quick story, so you have to basically like either check, I will be attending, this program, or I will not be attending this program when they give you your letter, and you have to submit the letter to the admissions office and, let them know what you're choosing. So, people usually, email in those letters because, they're not actually in Davis, right?
That was me at 18. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Same
exactly,
thing.
right? Yeah. And so, but because obviously I was in Davis at the time, I didn't want to just email it. I decided to just, fill it out like by hand, pen and paper, and hand it in to their office. And so I went to the viticulture and enology office, and I submitted my letter. And then the person was like, oh, it'll be great having you here. And then she looked at my letter. I was like, oh, you're not? And then that was a little bit awkward. But I was like, no. Actually, I will be staying here. I'll actually be in the horticulture and agronomy program, but I'll still be working with this department. I'll still be seeing you every day. And then she was like, oh, okay, that's cool. But quick little story there. So I opted for the PhD in horticulture and agronomy. I'm still here to this day. This is my 5th year as a PhD student, working with grapevines and grapevine viruses. So I don't really use any of the stuff I learned as an undergraduate anymore. It's nice to look back on, but I admit all of the stuff I learned in AIChE 140, 141, 155, all of that has been sort of ripped out of my head and replaced with stuff relating to grapes and viruses. That's why I'm still here today. That's why this is my 10th year as a student at UC Davis, a decade at Davis. That's why I'm here. I'm not crazy. Well, maybe I am, but I'm not that crazy.
Yeah, you're probably still within the standard, Dev. You're fine. And that's the story of getting into the PhD program, which you still are at.
Yes.
And now that you've been in grad school and you've got more experience than a lot of other mentors would probably have, just because you've been here so long. So, how did that impact the mentorship experiences you were getting once you actually committed to the horticulture PhD program?
So just to kind of like bounce off of what I mentioned before, the whole feeling of feeling unqualified, the feeling of why am I mentoring these students if they don't view me as a valuable mentor, that definitely was emphasized when when I became a graduate student. So not only was I not an undergraduate, I was a graduate student in a program that was not even in the College of Engineering. I wasn't even an engineer anymore. So there's a little bit of, I guess, bias that does happen in some of the minds of the undergraduates, where they like, I wouldn't go as far as saying that they don't respect me. It's more of a feeling of they don't find value in me, because I can't really give them what they need. I can't help them network with industry, because I'm not in industry, nor will I probably ever will be in that industry. I'm not an undergraduate, so there's a little bit of a disconnect there too. The age difference just keeps growing every year. My first year or two of grad school, it was okay. I was 22, 23, 24. They were 18, 19. Nah, not bad. Now I'm approaching the point where there's a 10-year difference between me and the mentees. And some of them feel a little bit strange regarding that. They feel like they can't really be friends with someone 10 years older than them, which I can somewhat understand. If I was in their position, I would feel a little bit similar as well.
Yeah, and I could see that. Doesn't mean it can't happen. It's just the rate at which you're able to bond with somebody as a friend to friend, mentor, mentee, in that situation gets smaller. Because your pool is, it's the same 17 to 18-year-old kind of experience level people, which, by the way, they're getting better. I don't know if you've noticed that. Have you noticed that they're getting more and more experience before they even show up to college?
Yes, exactly. This is a really huge topic, but especially within the pre-med students, med school admissions just gets more competitive every year, and so these students have to start so early, and of course that applies to the engineers as well.
I'm seeing it now where I'm meeting some of them going, holy crap, you look at their resume and it's just, man, I didn't have anything to. Granted, you're seeing a lot of the ones that are more motivated, so we're also seeing that bias as well, but nonetheless it's there and they are working hard for it. And just what we did in 2009 just to get into school, a lot of it was academic and extracurriculars. That was the way out. You did AP classes, you did the hard academic coursework, maybe a little bit of community college, you didn't have to, and then the extracurriculars, and that was the way out. And then all of a sudden now it's, no, you need to have some part-time work, and you need to have you should have led clubs, you should be reporting what kind of rank you're in, if you're in band, and how long you did it for. The detail got so much more I'd say the resolution got higher in all of their secondary stuff that we didn't even really think about too much. We'd put it down, but we didn't really put our weight on it in the way we did academics, extracurriculars, our personal statements. That's where the money was, and it's still there, but just the fact that the only way to get competitive is those secondary components. So being a tutor and being able to lead clubs and the part-time work, that's going up instead of remaining the same. And that means our audience is changing too. We're changing also because we're not in that same competitive environment they are. So their mindset's going to change too. So it's not the same. I can't build a family the exact same way I did in 2013. It's not going to roll. I need to build it, if I were to do it again, let's say I was 21 again, and now I'm a senior in the class of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I could build it the exact same way. I'd have to more appeal to the networking side, where that is totally being valued more. They want to have industry contacts in their upper division class no matter what. Like, that needs to be on their radar. They need to have an internship lined up by the end of their junior year without question. And that's, to me, is something that I didn't necessarily offer, but the soft skills stuff is still just as important. That's my argument for why mentorship's still needed. You still need to get these introverted engineering students that are forced to do highly competitive and comprehensive calculations, and force them to do the soft skills stuff too. Because if they can't communicate their answers that are right, they're valueless. It's the dialogue is here, not in their head. And we knock that out of people pretty well, even if they didn't want to admit it. But that's something that we'll keep continuing to do. How was your mentorship experience moving on into your grad school? Like, even in the last couple of years, did it seem to be more of just people not wanting to reach out, or is it more of what you were talking about in 2015, where this guy is more of the wine guy and grape guy, less on the I want to know someone from Genentech, and I want to get involved in the Bay Area, and I want to know what startups are going up so I can work there, so I can get into one of these competitive areas like Roche or whatever. Was it like that the last couple of years?
A little bit. I did get that feeling a little bit. Like, as you mentioned a little bit just now, a lot of these students have internships lined up, like, you know, they're somewhere between their junior and senior year. And so some of them ask me, oh, where did you do your internship as a chemical engineering student? Oh, like, oh, I didn't do an internship.
I didn't, yeah.
And then they're like, oh, what? And so again, I feel like an imposter at that point. They're on top of their stuff, trying to get these connections, trying to network, trying to apply for these internships as a freshman. And here I am, you know, talking about my experiences, and I'm doing none of that. And then this is a little bit tangential, but just to kind of emphasize my point a little bit more.
Sure.
So I actually had a student who wasn't even a freshman yet contact me because she heard my name through various other connections, and she was like, so she's actually a pre-med student, so she actually asked me if I needed a research assistant, if she could do undergraduate research in the lab that I'm working for. And she wasn't even a freshman yet. She was in the summer between her high school senior year and her freshman college year, and she was already trying to reach out and look for undergraduate research opportunities. I was like, oh my God. I didn't even know that this research world existed until my second or third year, honestly. And you have these incoming freshmen who are already reaching out. I thought that was incredible.
Nowadays, I think people understand the UC system really needs to be leveraged more than just coming here and that's enough for the name. And that's part of it, is that, oh, I've got this summer where I can utilize it. If I could get something, that would be great. And then that would be a great start to put that on my resume and get the ball rolling early. And for me, I didn't know jack all. I was just glad to be here.
Yes, exactly.
Just glad to be where I was and doing something meaningful and hard, and just focus on the major and get that and go. Granted, that changed for me after lower division. I understood after doing Formula Hybrid for a little bit, just kind of being on the outskirts. Yeah, this would be a good idea to keep doing stuff like this, because you're going to be working with teams. Engineering teams. It won't be necessarily just you, so be cognizant that in a team environment you should be doing something with it. So that shows some kind of direction, and people can see, oh, okay, groups can trust you. Okay, that's good, because most companies have more than one person in them. So yeah, the competition is going up. Now there is, I do have a solution for this. And I was talking with John Davis about this.
Oh, okay.
He's their new external VP this year. So it turns out he approached me about maybe doing some kind of workshop. And he started with a resume workshop, and I think we got to talking about simulations for interviews. And I think that is what we could start doing more of. We can do that. I mean, we've been in interviews and we've had to talk about things. Heck, the podcast, that's a great environment for that kind of stuff. So I've offered to them, if they want to do a panel and they want to do like get used to Q&As, get used to interview sessions, just getting used to talking and making their soft skills stronger. That's still something the mentorship family can do, and just what the members can do on their own. So I brought that up, and I think that's coming up here. You remember the last month's presentation? They wanted it on interviews.
Yes.
So I gave them the 4 different types that I know that are around. You know, the video, the in-person, the on-site, and the classic phone screen. It was so cool that, so there is value. It's just we need to appeal more to what their needs are now as these 18 to 21-year-olds and just get it from there. And then you've got the transfer level competition that I think we didn't put in yet. The transfer level, you got these guys that are like our age that are coming in, doing the major. They're at peak competency in their brain, and they've been working at it for all this time. So unlike me, who peaked at like 23, and then it was a nice steady slope down to a plateau where I'm at now, and I just kind of keep it in a maintaining a tight plus or minus. They have been increasing their knowledge and increasing, and then now they have to take it to their maximum level, and their maturity is just so different, and their friend groups are tighter, and that's one reason why I was with the transfer students even back in our day, because I realized their life experiences and soft skills are where I would like to be, if not better. They have the maturity level that I would prefer in getting through these courses. And it was great having them around, just from this is the opposite end of me not being so much a mentor, but really just listening to what they had to say. And that was important for me to develop. So the mentor-mentee relationship, the good thing about it is you can always swap the roles if you really want to. You just need to find someone older and a little more wisdom and hear them out. And then if you want to do peer-to-peer, again, just do what we're doing and just have a conversation about it and see if we can both learn something from it. So, yeah, I'm thinking appealing to what they actually need. It's important because their officer board is keenly aware of what they need too. Because a lot of them are in the same boat, and they're bringing up, hey, the interview process is not talked about. Maybe if we got some SOPs through it, that would be great. The second thing would be double downing on getting people into the officer board in general. And there's already a scarcity. Right? So that scarcity is going to drive a healthy amount of competition of people that want to get in there. Right now, they've had their maximum amount of freshman reps, and I can't remember how many they had, but I think it was like 5, which is new record.
Yes.
Usually you only have like 2 or 3. 3 is like a good year. You couldn't eliminate them. So getting people to get involved with AIChE early would also help promote what we would want, which is this competency of soft skills, getting familiar with group activities, planning, forward thinking, getting ready for errors when they inevitably come up, because when there's people involved, inevitably something goes wrong. The problem questionnaire didn't put out. Yeah, well, the value is 3 times x to the third, but we actually had to add a safety factor in there because that's not good enough. A lot of that happens with presentations or setting up for, we have too many people. We need to find a way to get people some seats. The stuff on the fly, which is really annoying. But if you can handle it, and at least understand that could be a problem, it's that forward thinking that we get to develop in them, besides just highly concentrating on calculations, which is what the university does best. Highly concentrated on calculations. So what else are you doing with like the future, like what you want to be involved with mentorship? What do you think?
So with mentorship, going back to your question before this, basically my experiences in mentorship as a graduate student, I'll add one more thing actually, is I think we need to have both sides of the mentorship relationship be a bit more accountable. I mentioned this because my first year of graduate school, my mentorship family for 2015, 2016, I literally heard from none of them.
So flat out, nobody.
Nobody, except for my co-mentor at the time. So what happened was I got I got the family assignments with everyone's email address and stuff. I did email to the 5 or 6 of them, I don't recall, and then I'm like, hey there, family. I'm Andy, blah, blah. I look forward to meeting with you. Here's a little bit about me to get the ball rolling a bit. I would love to meet each and every one of you, and I look forward to seeing all of you. My co-mentor at the time, her name was Belinda, I believe.
Belinda Toe.
Yes,
Yeah.
So she actually did respond. It was like, oh yeah, like let's go out and let's get coffee or something. Yeah, but then our actual mentees, no response whatsoever. Tried again a few weeks later. Hey guys, haven't heard from you yet. Just seeing what's up. Let's grab lunch sometimes. Again, silence. And then Belinda was also like, okay, yeah, let's go. And then I think it was around this time of year, so like Christmas time. Belinda, I believe, tried it one more time. It was like, happy holidays, everyone. Hope everyone had a good final exam season. I look forward to meeting you guys next quarter or something. Again, nothing. And because, again, that was my first year of grad school, I was a bit busy trying to adapt to this new environment. I didn't try again after December. And nothing, just absolute nothing. Silence. Not even a single person responded to that email thread. And that was when I was like, okay, this is getting a little bit sad and also a bit frustrating for me too.
Sure, you're putting yourself out there. And believe me, you're not the only one. Myself and a few others in the industry mentorship program, where I met Belinda, believe it or not, she was in the first group, which actually cared, and it was new, people wanted it, and we met up for dinner a couple times, and we talked about what they wanted, but it was meant to be low key because it was just starting, but they treated it seriously enough to respond from time to time, and we got something to work. It was the next quarter when they swapped everybody. Now everyone's going, what the heck? We're just getting the ball rolling with these people, and now we're stuck in this first date phase. You know what I mean? Where you're, okay, hi, I'm so-and-so. Hi, hello, can't remember your name again, right? Another stranger. And it's kind of frustrating from an introvert perspective because, great, I'm spending my time with another stranger again, just like last quarter. And eventually people just said, yeah, I'll just do something else. It's not working. And part of it's because it was a new design and we never really had done an industry mentorship program before. But my friend Daniel, I'm on, and I were both talking about it, and we're going, dude, anyone's responded to you? I got him to go to lunch or dinner one time at In-N-Out. You want to come with? And sure. And so we had some limited success, but we were hoping it would be a little more than that as far as getting them ready for the interview session and maybe what they could do as far as getting themselves to be inspired, because a lot of it's inspiration. Someone that was at UC Davis is offering their time to talk to you and have a conversation about what to make you better. If someone was telling me that at 19, I would have jumped all over that, because that doesn't happen. What normally happens is you got to go find it, and good luck finding it, because back then, finding jobs back then or internships felt like Indeed.com today, where it's just this sea of there's all these jobs out there, and 90% of them aren't even full. Except it's really 90% of them are full, but it's too late and they didn't take them down the postings. So it's a real pain in the neck. So at least back then, because information, it was a little more, it wasn't as open as it is now. And I'm surprised in 10 years how much we've been able to kind of have a better scope of things. Even if you were 18 now. But yeah, we noticed the limited success of some of these other mentorship programs after we graduated from undergrad. And we were wondering about accountability too, going, not all of them are responding. This is kind of a big deal. We're putting some time out for them. And I was talking about this with John as well, John Davis, and I go, you know what? Maybe for your interviews simulations, what we could do is have a limited number of spots, so that way the people who really want it are going to get in there, and that forces a certain level of value. And it's not about making it exclusive, but maybe making it scarce enough where the people that don't want to do it, like that bottom 20%, which unfortunately might be the people who actually need it. But if you make it scarce, you might actually be able to help more people. So there's this trade-off of, do I do it more like a socialist where everybody's open and it's accessible to everybody, but I don't get to help out as many people because everyone assumes that it's going to be there? Or do I put in a natural scarcity where I'm only going to have a certain amount of attention span, but the people that show up actually are going to get something out of it and be motivated? So there's a big trade-off there. So we thought about the scarcity model, and I think that might come up. So that way we can find a way to get people involved and make it feel valued. Because if people assume something's free and it's just going to be expected, that automatically devalues it, especially as time goes on. Unless you have people on the inside showing its value every year, where it's and that doesn't always happen with that kind of model. That's more on the rare side. Scarcity seems to be a good choice. So with other mentorship experiences, because I guess that's really more of what we're talking about, I still had a lot of mentees around Davis, but now they're in upperclassmen. So it's really cool seeing them because now they're in a different stage, and so am I. So when they'd come to me about stuff, it was not quite the same, but it was more peer-to-peer on some of this stuff, because we both had figured out some things about maybe their club or what they're doing in AIChE or just whatever, life stuff. But the mentorship stuff would still come up from time to time. And I lived with one of them, Pablo. He was living with me for 3 years. He was actually, when I got back to California after getting a new job, he was the guy I hit up about getting a space with. And it was interesting to see outsiders see the mentorship program in play in that first apartment. And I didn't like that first apartment that much, but I liked the effects it was having on the people. So we had 5 roommates, and there was a girlfriend of one of the roommates who was best friends with Pablo. So anyone's affecting Pablo's life positively, I'm giving them a thumbs up because he's the mentee figure. And one of his best friend's girlfriend goes, "Wow, you're doing like a father figure thing. Do you know that?" And then I was kind of taken aback by that because I didn't feel that way. And I go, "What?" And then she, "Yeah, are you kidding me? I'm hearing talk about your roommates. They love it." And I was going, okay, well, something's working, but I don't always see it. So the mentorship aspect doesn't always have to be this instant gratification. Oh, the light bulb goes off when I'm there, and then I get to see the effects. Sometimes it happens later. And that was a time when it happened later, when it was happening behind the scenes, and I wasn't really getting the instant gratification reward that maybe ChemE gave me or some of these other spots. And a lot of that back then also was delayed. But I saw enough people where it was like a revolver, where it's just, I may have not seen the other 5 chambers, but one of them was always going off, was active. So it was, so the mentorship experience I was having in grad school, that was, while you were in grad school, while I was working, and while some of my mentees now are in upper class, it was a different experience for sure, and it was not the same way they needed. So I had to change my dynamics a lot. And a lot of it was actually spending less time with them so they could focus on their work. At the end of the day, they had the motivation. They need to get stuff done. And I totally understood. It was kind of sad, though, because I didn't get to see them very much. But when I did see them and we did put in the time, it was good. But I would have this initial sadness after I left. And I go, man, I don't get to see them again for like a few weeks now or whatnot. But there were some critical moments like Iron Chef. So okay. Iron Chef in 2018. This is the moment. So Bryan and Pablo invite me in 2018. This is their last year. So this is the last time doing it. And there's this guy, Ian, who is encouraging people, come on, guys. He's kind of doing a lackadaisical. We need to get this Iron Chef thing going. And Iron Chef was great and all, and like the food was fine, and that's where they get together and they have all these random dishes of. You only have 4 ingredients to make or something, or is it they have to make a...
So you have an ingredient. So basically, I think a few hours or a day beforehand, an ingredient is announced, and that has to be kind of like the focus for all the dishes. Like that's how the Iron Chef show is. They have some sort of like star ingredient. Yeah.
So that star ingredient's gonna form the frame for the other ingredients you're gonna put around to make a dish.
A little bit. Yeah. Like you have to make a number of dishes that have this secret ingredient as a star.
Got it. So I got invited to it because they wanted me to be a judge, which I thought was really funny because usually it's like a professor thing. 2017, it was actually professors there. This time, I don't remember if it was professor this time. It might have just been other people that did it. The year before that, it was Struva saying, "This chicken is too dry." And then you got Roland Fowler that's laughing like crazy. So it was really weird to be up with them because I'm going, whoa, this is... Okay, this is normally professors doing the judging. They were short judges, so they grabbed me. 2018's was much less pressure, especially since I've got a gamer tag on the guy, for crying out loud. Oh. Yeah, that's a different story, though. Anyway, so I take the dishes, it's fine, but I noticed that comment that guy did, and he's leading the event. And I'm going, that's not a good way to get people to do something. So I don't know why it bothered me so much, but it just, sometimes you get that, you just can't scratch the itch. And I talked to him after, and I go, "Hey, can I talk to you outside for a minute?" And it wasn't angry at him or anything, but it was just like, this really bothered me, and I'm going to tell you what bothered me. And I told him about what was going on, and his eyes just kind of popped up, like, this guy actually cares. And I'm like, yeah, I care, and they care too. It's just, that's not the way you talk to people if you want to get them to be excited about something. I don't know if you know how you sound. This is how you sounded. And he didn't have the awareness of it at that moment, but once it was revealed to him about what secondary effects were going on, he turned right around. And it was really cool, because that's where mentorship really can be handy, where they're seeing somebody mess up in the third person, where the guy is seeing himself in the first person and not seeing the second and tertiary effects. So he was really thankful for him. We actually got to talk about a lot of other things too. We had a mentorship moment after that, because once we broke that icebreaker, everything else was on the table. So we actually got to talk about other things involving the mentorship program. And he's like, "Yeah, dude, some of this stuff as a sophomore seems like it's a lot of work." And before I knew it, that was what I call a surface layer phenomenon. So we were seeing something much deeper underneath the surface, and I think that's what bothered me. I knew something else about this guy needed just someone was looking out for him. So once we got that icebreaker done, you really got to see what was underneath the surface. And I was like, "Yeah, can you exchange numbers?" Yeah, sure. Nice to meet you, bud. And I'm glad you're able to see that, because it's hard to see that when it's day 60 of the same results, and all you can do is just have that little bit of resentment around, we got to get through another event. And he snapped out of it. He didn't stay in the major, but it's that thing I told you about. Sometimes people benefit so much from what they did, even in failing, that he took that with him into the material science world, still at Davis. And the guy cheered up a lot more. He did a lot of other stuff that was, to his credit, self-improvement. So it wasn't just me just, spark, then the guy's off to the races. It was more of that awareness that only someone else that would tell him the truth could provide. So that was one mentorship story in my work experience after being involved in AFC for about 2.5 years, and not really doing so much on the mentorship side. But when I had the chance, I'd come in and do stuff. We did a triple board Monopoly night one night. Okay. Yeah, actually it was 2. We did it at least 3 different times. One of them, which was, I think that was with the Bible study group, the Christian Grads Fellowship. But then the other 2 was the mentorship family. So you put 3 boards together,
Wow.
and so you triple the size, so that way everyone's got a chance to get Monopoly, probably multiple. So what that does is it makes the game go a little longer, but then when it does get to critical max, people are just dropping out left and right, because usually there's these corporate trusts that are formed, and now it's, ooh man, they've got a lot of ways to screw you over. And back then we didn't get all the kinks out, but now what's supposed to happen is you have to take the money from the other team. That's the only way to actually get money, but that's after like 3 hours of playing. so we did some, and there were the other mentorship things that were great. Like it was 1 a.m. and I couldn't sleep, and I had Brian, Pablo, and Inez and Randy over, and they were talking about stuff, and they just got back from a big. So there was a powwow, and then just like, hey guys, what's up? And it was like an hour of good times. But those were the gems through months. It wasn't like 2014 where it was happening weekly. Now it's happening over weeks. Maybe get a gem. Month later, get a gem. 2 weeks later, get a gem. Still happening, but the frequency, at least my expectations from 2014 were just totally out of whack. So it forced me to kind of dial back and go, you know what? Because we're in a particular role, that for us, we need to only insert it when it is necessary. So only give the advice when necessary, and then allow them to make some mistakes. And that was hard to take in because I really liked the old method, but that's not where they were, and that's not what they needed. You give someone what they don't need, they actually get a little mad because, well, I can't use this. So I think that's the future. I guess going back to that original question, that's more of the future of what we need to do if we want to stay in, which is the atypical role. The typical role is you dive in, you give them as much stuff as possible, and you help them out side by side, but that's not where we're at. We're more of like the battleship on the side of the coast, waiting for the fire control. Okay, grid coordinates 23 high, 36 low. Give them a burst 3-shot servo, or you got it. And then, but they're not going to call for that every second, and that's kind of a good thing because then they're always dependent on you. And this mentorship thing that we do is more about promoting their independence, but also just giving them that guidance to, you don't have to be on your own, but we're going to give you the confidence if you are. And that's a good balance, because then when they do leave, they don't need you anymore, and then they can go help somebody else, and so can you. That's the plus side. You don't have all these dependent people saying, oh, I need my mentor. Which is, that's when you know you did a bad job, is if they keep asking for you only, because you never got them to that self-independent stage. So they're still stuck on this rack where they can't move up to self-independence. And that's kind of it's not a slave mentality, but it's more of the out of sight, out of mind mentality. So moving on with the questions, though, what do you think your life trajectory would be like without it?
Without the mentorship program?
Yeah.
In all honesty, I think my career trajectory would have stayed very similar. I don't think the mentorship program really changed anything regarding my grad school ambitions and getting into grad school and staying here for grad school. But in terms of more like personal life stuff, like I would have never met Mr. Joey Sue. He's practically my best friend. We talk pretty consistently. We're actually traveling together in a couple of days, actually. So we make lots of good memories together, and he's really been a big part of my life for the past, I guess, 7 years now. And so I guess from a personal aspect, I would have never met Joey if I never did this program, and I would have been missing out on a lot of like fun times for the past 7 years. But other than that, though, career-wise, as I mentioned, I don't think much would change. Yeah.
Okay. For me, I know it was a personality thing that it helped a lot on the soft skills. So career was like 90% unchanged. The 10% where it was, though, was when I got to go in upstream oil, I go, oh, I can show these guys some inside tips. So then I'd tell them about some stories from frac crews going bad, or yeah, we're doing 80 stages coil frac, and they go, what's that? And I go, I don't know, I just found out yesterday. And then I'll tell you about more later. Or this is what kind of pumps we use and the crazy pressure maximums that we had. I think some of our pumps, I think their burst disc could go from 6,000 to 8,000 to 15,000 to 20,000 psi, 4 different valves. You could swap in and out. So minimum 6,000, maximum 20. We normally use 15. So that was 15,000 psi. So I don't know if you've ever felt that. Because most of us have only felt something along the lines of 0 to 75 psi, because that's a lot of the water pressure in your house. So 15,000 we're going, because we're breaking rocks apart. So we're not getting up to 15,000. We designed for it so that way we could really frack at like 8,000 or 7. If you're at 5, it's even better because you've got all this wiggle room. The problem is it was really the wellhead itself that wasn't rated that much, at least on the wells that are done and that we have done. In my experience, I think it was 10,000.
Okay.
So our stuff's rated by 1.5 times that. So we would already be in trouble if we got that high. So it's more about save the client's well before it breaks. So you've got pressure tests there. So I tell them about this kind of stuff, and that did have an element of me choosing something crazy like Schlumberger, but it was only about 10%. The other 90 was I did want to have an adventure for my own sake and get involved in something difficult that would show me if worthy to go into something more comfortable like a downstream oil job or being able to have a life, a house and maybe a family and a wife and all that stuff. But that's not the way it turned out. In a year, I got kicked back because we saw all these people getting let go, and I didn't want to be one of them. So, and the AFC that showed up on my radar, and then went over there, and which I'm still working at now. And that's been good because I ran into Joey, and then we've had at least 10 different class of 24 team members work there. So for class of 20, our class specifically benefited the most from being able to work there, especially the people who stuck around. So some of them have made it into senior process engineering roles. Some of them have gotten into things like what I've done, where they've gotten to help out in the control room, being able to help out on multiple lines. But as far as the mentorship program itself, it really was on the soft skills. It was on the how do I get people what they need without being pushy, and how do I do it without giving them what they don't need, because that usually makes people mad. So it was being more precise about what people need and how to not impose my needs for theirs and mix those up. Because at first you think, if I just give them what I need, they'll be all good. That's not true. I had to figure that out. Both senior year and later. It was way more apparent later. Because, again, we're talking to different juniors and seniors and different sophomores and freshmen than when we were in their state. So we need to bridge it. So when I was your age, this is what we were doing. What you guys are dealing with now, this is how it got there. And here's some things that we would probably do if we were in your shoes again. But because we didn't actually do it, that's when we have to keep our mouth shut a little bit, because then we sound like the guy that's just done everything. And that's not true. That's not us. So what would you say to people that, if they wanted to get into mentorship, what would you say to those kind of people that are interested, they don't know how, why you think they should?
So I guess the short answer is just do it. Even if you have all these doubts regarding whether or not you'd be a good mentor, just ask yourself, is there something you wish you would have known when you were a freshman or sophomore? And the answer is most likely yes. And so if that's the case, then you should just do it. Even if you think you can't provide anything of value, you most likely can provide something of value. Like even the smallest little nugget of wisdom can really be useful for a struggling freshman or sophomore. And then if there's no actual formal mentorship program set up for the particular program or major or school that you're in, you can just start one. shout out to my friend Rochelle Padre. So she was a biotech major at Davis, who also graduated class of 2014. And her biotech club didn't have a mentorship program. And then I was talking to her about AICHE's program, and she was like, oh, maybe I can incorporate that into my biotech club. And she did. And so that's all it takes, really. Like, even if one doesn't exist, you can just make your own. It doesn't have to be as formal, or at least not first, but at least getting a good start out there. If you can help at least like one person or one soul, sometimes it makes it all worth it.
I'd have to agree on starting your own, as long as you have a means to do it. So even if it's a 4-person mentorship program and you got the one mentor, if you've got the means to do that and people find it valuable, cultivate and see where it goes. And if it doesn't work out, maybe you can take that into another program later, and that might encourage others to do the same. And being able to get into mentorship, for me, has allowed me to think way less about myself and more about what others need, instead of just always focusing on what I need. And the being able to service other people's needs, that is how the world works. We don't get our own food, water, shelter, electricity. It's all services. So if you can master being a servant to other people, you will find that people will find it valuable if you're able to do it well. And if you don't do it well at first, fine. Maybe you need to be a mentee to somebody else somewhere else. But at least start and get involved, so that way you might be able to help somebody else later. Mentors aren't going to be around forever. We always need new ones, both in AICHE and in the workforce and wherever the area of operation is of your choosing. We need to be able to get people competent, trained, and get the next mentees rolling, because before you know it, someone might leave, someone might fatally leave the world in a way they didn't want to. All of these important traits need to happen at some point. So getting involved in the mentorship program, or just any mentorship program, I'd have to agree with Andy wholeheartedly to do it. And if you need to start humbly, start as a mentee and ask and see if people will be willing to help you on your journey to eventually help somebody else. Because, again, that's how the world works. It wouldn't work otherwise. Everyone wouldn't be able to trust anybody. So with that being said, Andy, do you have any other final thoughts? We've gone about 2 hours and 11 minutes. So.
Wow. Final thoughts. I guess if anyone wants to contact me, feel free. I'll give Jacob maybe some of my contact info, my LinkedIn, my Davis profile, and then he can maybe link it in the description of the video.
Oh, I'll put that in. I'll put all of it in.
Yeah,
I'll
great.
put mine in too.
Awesome. That way, if anyone has any questions whatsoever, whether it be regarding grad school, regarding like transitioning into a new career, viticulture, grapes and wine, anything, just I'm happy to help. That's probably one of my most favorite things to just talk to anyone about. The idea that you're not actually stuck in whatever major you chose when you were an 18-year-old in high school. There are other things that you can do. Even if you graduate with a degree in a certain field, it's still perfectly possible to go somewhere else. You're not stuck. That's the main thing I want to emphasize there. And I love talking to people regarding this. So feel free to come talk to me about this.
Yeah, and with that said, Andy, thanks again for coming today. This has been a lot of fun. I enjoyed this for once. Instead of it being up there, I've actually got somebody right here where we just have a conversation and just record it. So this was a lot easier in that regard, because you got to worry about a lot of other stuff when it's online. Mm-hmm. So thank you for being a part of this, Andy.
Well, it was my pleasure. It was very enjoyable. So thank you for inviting me.
Man, I'll do it again if you ever have any other things to say, because we'll probably do more mentorship live streams in the future. So
I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you very much, Andy. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.